Hi kids, welcome back to the wonderful world of dairy farming with your host, me, Riley Boadwine. I hope you all are fairly warm right now because as of this recording, it is about negative 30 degrees outside, which is not too terrible for the cows. They get to live inside a nice air temp controlled barn and they have thick insulating fur that keeps them warm in the wintertime, whereas I do not because my fur just looks gross. Which is why I have this nice insulated coat that is somewhat similar. Today, we're out here in the maternity barn because we're going to be talking about one of my favorite subjects, calves, calving, and the life of a young calf. So, maybe you do or maybe you don't. The question is, what is the difference between a cow, a calf, and a heifer? All terms you might have heard, but what do they mean? A heifer is simply a young cow that hasn't given birth to a calf yet. And a calf is usually just a heifer who has not been weaned and is still in her youngest state. Now, the big difference between a heifer and a cow is that once a heifer's been through gestation, which is the time where her calf is in her belly growing, which is about 9 months, exactly like in humans, she will eventually give birth. And they usually do this at around 2 years of age, sometime between 24 and 26 months. So when a cow gives birth for the first time, her body changes a lot. Mostly that she can develop her udder, which is what she uses to feed her young, or in our case, produce the milk that everybody drinks. When this happens, a cow's body can go through a lot of changes and it takes a lot of her energy. So if we're not careful, she could probably get sick. But we do a pretty good job around here, so that's not too big of an issue. As you can see, this calf here is still wet, which means she was born pretty recently. Right away, when she plops to the ground and takes her first breath, her mother will start licking her, try to get her, a little bit stimulated and make sure she's awake and alive. And she might stand up within about the first half an hour of her life. There's another important aspect to this. You see, when a calf is first born, she doesn't have all the antibodies in her body from her mother like we get in humans naturally. A cow will produce a special kind of milk, a new mother cow, produces a special kind of milk called colostrum. This colostrum has all of the immunoglobulins, aka antibodies, that the calf needs in order to protect her from infection. A calf, within a couple hours of being born, needs to drink 2 quarts of this colostrum in order to help her immune system get going. And by the time she's 12 hours old, she hopefully has had almost a gallon of good colostrum. And we can test the colostrum using machines or from a blood transfusion to see how well it transferred over. So after a couple hours when a calf is born, we usually try to separate her from her mother because these Holstein mamas aren't exactly Mother of the Year award material. She starts to get anxious and run around and wants to go to the milking parlor and be back with the rest of her herd. So instead, we separate them off, bring them in here where they can chill and be warm, maybe even get a cute little Armani calf jacket until they are ready to go to the calf barn where they will be bio-isolated from you. This is what the biosecure pens that the calves will spend the first couple of weeks of their lives in look like. We keep them separated from each other because there can be a lot of germs and stuff that go around in the calf barn, and in order to make sure that she doesn't get sick, you kind of have to keep her separated from her friends. Although, as you can see, they're not that separated, and they seem to be having a pretty good time. If a calf does get sick, with your veterinarian's approval and care, you can give her antibiotics to make sure she gets better. This is important because sometimes if a calf gets a bad infection early in her life, it can affect her for the whole rest of her life, which is not something that we want. Here's their starter grain. Pretty good. Once they're a little bit older, they can start switching to more grassy forages. I am not a cow. Yeah, that's for sure. But anyways, I don't know what I was going to say. So as you can see, the calf is really trying to suckle on me right now. Because just like all little babies, they would usually be suckling on an udder if they weren't here and then they were out in a pasture somewhere. And you can hear them bellowing behind me because it is almost feeding time. We usually feed calves 3 times a day depending on their needs, with what I would call a mix between milk replacer and milk we use from the cows. Milk replacer is essentially like a balanced and nutritious protein shake that a human would drink, but it's really important because it helps the calves grow bigger and stronger faster. After a couple of weeks, usually about 7 of drinking milk replacer, the calf's stomach will start to develop the papillae in her rumen, which is a cow's special type of stomach, that can handle grains and other grain-like nutrients like corn. After that, we will wean them off of milk and start feeding them grain. And that's when we can take these panels away and they can start getting introduced to each other a little bit better. Cows are social creatures. They need to be around other cows of their species. It helps with their learning, development, and health in order to be around other calves. So here's kind of an example of what it looks like when the panels are pulled and they can live in cohabitation. And as you can see, they aren't even acting that cold. That's that good old insulated fur that I was talking about. As long as this bedding is warm and dry, and you can tell if it's warm and dry by sticking your knee in it like I'm doing now, they'll probably be fine. They can share body heat with each other. Whereas me, I'm cold, and they don't want to cuddle with me right now. I don't know why. Another important aspect is you can see these tags on here. Keeping track of a calf's information, health status, and how well she's doing is very important. So we make sure that we name each of these cows with a specific number, including that, if you can see this little white button, that is a magic special button that on my scanner, I can scan a calf and it will give me all of her stats right then and there. Kind of like fantasy football, except way cooler and with cows. Hey, guys. They're kind of starting to get to that teenager age though, so they are not suckling and being near as nice and cute as they were a little bit ago. Inside of this big old honking tank with this hose nozzle attached to it, this is how we carry the milk from where it was pasteurized, which is basically a giant heater that heats up the milk to get rid of any unwanted germs. We use it to carry it out here, and then from here, while it's still fairly warm, because calves like to drink milk that's warm, and when it's cold, it helps heat them up a little bit. We can just deposit it based on their needs following these simple lines. Simply stick it in the bucket, fill it up, and when it meets the line for the age of calf that you're looking for, you can turn the nozzle and shut it off. Thanks for joining me, everybody, and I hope you learned a little bit about everybody's favorite little baby calves. We'll see you next time on The Wonderful World of Dairy Farming with your host, me, Riley Boadwine.